SalesTV, the North American edition. Today, we're talking about a sales leader's guide to building an effective sales enablement program. I'm joined by Mike Kunkle, a leader with expertise in sales enablement, sales effectiveness, sales transformation, and sales force performance. Mike is the Vice President of Sales Effectiveness Services at SPARXiQ, where he helps clients improve sales results and accelerate profitable growth. Mike, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Rob, and great introduction. That was just like my mom wrote it.
There you go. Now, while you and I go back a while, please share with our audience a little bit about you, your journey into sales and enablement, and where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I won't give you the extended version because we want to keep people awake. But I actually have 2 degrees in music and played professionally for a while. And when that career sunsetted, when I decided, man, this is not where I'm going to spend the rest of my life, I took a job answering telephones, which is what it said in the newspaper. This is how long ago it was. It was a newspaper ad. And that's how I got into sales. And it started at inbound, and then it was inside sales, outbound. Then I ran this company. And after that, I realized you don't get promoted to owner. And I got into corporate America, ran a branch. And then we improved sales 600% year over year. And they said, wow, can you train other people to do that? And I lied right through my teeth and said, absolutely, I can. And that's how I got into sales training. I learned a lot, read everything I could get on it, and started to get into training, and then realized, training on its own doesn't move the needle enough. And Rob, in the early days, I was really lucky. When I got into this company, they liked what I was doing in this branch, which is why they promoted me. And so they sort of gave me enough rope to hang myself. They gave me free license on what to do and how to do it. But they said, we just want to know that we're getting a return on our investment for all this training we're going to do. And so this is my first training gig, right? I didn't realize that wasn't a common practice everywhere. I'm relatively, young. I'm new in corporate America. So I just started to research how to do that. And then I started to figure out that you had to do other things and managers had to be involved. And it took content and training and tools and other things. And so I started doing what we would think of today as sales enablement back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Probably it was 1991 in that role. And it took me maybe a year to figure some of those things out. But then we really started to move the needle. And that was the beginning really of my career in sales effectiveness, sales enablement, whatever one of the 30 terms we've called ourselves over the past 30 years. But that's how I got started. I made my way through startups and middle market firms and a couple of Fortune 50 companies, corporations. And today I am with SPARXiQ, as you mentioned. We help companies radically improve both revenue and profit in a variety of ways. And some of that is sales effectiveness services, which is my team. And we help companies hire more effectively, evaluate their sales force to figure out what things to change and evolve. And we provide training services and sales coaching training as well. So that's a little bit about the history and sort of the whirlwind tour right up to what I'm doing today.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I won't even bother to ask you the definition of what is sales enablement. Really, every sales leader within an organization is going to have their own definition. But I will ask, in your opinion, why has sales enablement, or for some now revenue enablement, or whatever you want to call it, become such a crucial topic for sales leaders to understand and get right?
Yeah, so a lot of speculation about where exactly it started and who started it. But I think for the most part, the reason that it's caught on, at least in some verticals, right? So I'm the vice president of sales effectiveness services because in the verticals I work in most today, the term enablement is barely recognized. But in technology and in SaaS in particular, where sales enablement started, it's widely recognized and it's caught on because I think at some point we realized what we were doing wasn't working as effectively as it could. And I saw this early in my career when I walked into companies, either as an employee or a consultant, that there was probably potential to almost double the output of a sales force without adding a single body. And in some cases, I actually helped companies make that happen. Now, it takes a lot to do that, but it is possible if you align all the performance levers and get things moving. And I think it's that desire, it's that promise, it's that recognition that wow, we could be operating at higher levels of efficiency and effectiveness. That's how enablement got caught on. Now, in the SaaS vertical in particular, a lot of startup companies, right? And while many of them aren't really ready for all of the systems and process and things that enablement brings, the ones that they are ready for, the ones that they can do at their current level of effectiveness or income or maturity, really can help them grow to the point where they can put the rest of it in place. And so I think you're right about trying to define it at this point. I have a post I call, about the flavors of sales enablement. And it has to do in two different elements, I think. One is, what is the maturity of the organization? Is it a fast moving startup that's trying to get product market fit and just grow revenue and get to be a series A, B, or C company? Is it a middle market firm that's profitable but sees the potential to grow? Is it a Fortune 10 giant who really wants to make their sales force as effective as possible to better serve customers and continue to grow? And so, if you look at that, that's one piece of the flavor. And the second piece is, what is the level of maturity of the sales enablement function? And I think of maturity models in terms of, well, there's no enablement, there is random enablement, right? Things just kind of happening random everywhere. There's an informal level where it's starting to take shape and have systems, process, approach, methodology. Then there's formal enablement. And there have been a lot of studies done, as you know, that show when enablement functions get to that formal level, it starts to have a real impact on revenue plan attainment, quota attainment, and win rates. Then there's a level even beyond that, adaptive, where you're really doing more what I would think of as performance consulting. You've got a base in place of the formal enablement, but then you become the problem solver or internal consultant to help close gaps and help the organization move further. And so, where the organization is in their maturity level and where the enablement function is sort of combined to create a lot of different flavors, if you will, of enablement. And so I think that's one of the challenges today, and even trying to think about how do we define it, is it is very contextual and it's nuanced based on the situation.
Sure, makes sense. So then, with all of those different flavors and possibilities, what are some pitfalls or misconceptions about sales enablement that sales leaders should be wary of?
Well, one is that sort of like the OKRs, right? It really kind of align where the organization is going across the company. One of the things and the biggest gaps I see in either sales effectiveness at a whole or certainly of sales enablement effectiveness is that there's a misalignment or there isn't a needle and thread running through sort of the strategies across functions. And so if you don't start as a sales leader, for example, understanding what is the organizational strategy, and if you weren't aligned across your, marketing especially, but other executives at the C level, if you're not all aligned around what is the strategy, what are our key objectives for this year, what are the goals that we need to get to, what are the metrics that matter most, and then then do a model of what's the sales model that will best support that. What is the process that we need to follow based on a really deep understanding of our buyers, which I call buyer acumen, right? How do we best organize to serve them? What's the process and methodology? If you don't start to get all of those things understood in place strategically, you can't build effective tactical plans to execute to achieve your strategy. And then you can't do all of the other things like hiring, training, coaching, managing, leading that you need to execute the strategy. So one of the things I see, Rob, is this disconnect between someone will come into the position like a senior sales leader. They know that there's this 24-month pressure, right? It's a crazy stat, but we all have heard that the turnover rate of senior sales leaders is around 24 months. So there's this pressure to make something happen. So rather than step back and really do the strategic planning and align to the organization, they start to barrel forward on tactical planning about how they're just going to go to market. And that if that's out of whack or out of alignment with the strategic plan, there's going to be friction somewhere down the road. And if that tactical plan isn't supportive of that and the objectives, then how do you know how to most effectively model the organization and hire, train, coach, and manage to support where you're going to get to? So that alignment is really big for me. And the first thing I even teach enablers is understand the context in which you need to enable. Understand the strategy and the elements of that strategy, things like the mission, vision, values, strategic objectives, the full marketplace analysis and buyer personas and customer and buyer acumen. What's the business model? Pricing, SWOT analysis, all of that, which leads to then being able to put together a go-to-market plan to execute against it, and then hire, train, coach, manage all the things that enablement supports to execute that. If you get those in alignment, first as a sales leader, and then your enablement leader aligns to that, you have a prayer of really moving the needle and creating incredible results. When there's misalignment there, that's when things happen like what I call a master of disaster. Right. And I've worked for a few of these, and I'm guessing you have too. And what I mean by that is it's an executive leader, sales leader, or somebody else who always overreacts to the last thing that goes wrong. And so a knee will bounce off a forehead, and all of a sudden, plans that are in place change as the whole organization suddenly gets pushed in this new direction. And then guess what happens 3 weeks later? It's
I
business.
imagine it's pushback.
Something else goes wrong,
Yeah.
right? And so then boom, right? And that's it. And so this is that whole random act of enablement thing. It's also one level higher, or, random acts of leadership or management. And so without the guidelines and guardrails of that strategic plan, the tactical plan to achieve it, and the execution against that, all right, you could bounce all over the place and never really get to a higher level of maturity for enablement because the organization is out of whack in the first place. I wrote a post a while back about there were things that sales enablement can't fix. You're not going to fix bad product market fit, and you're not going to fix a senior executive team that's out of alignment or all rowing the boat in different directions or random acts of enablement. So, where you choose to work as an enabler can have a massive impact on your career, how well you'll do, and the impact that you can have in the organization. Because you might have an impact, and I've had an impact in organizations that were out of whack, but I've not had the impact in those companies as I've had when you were working with an aligned team. Right. And so that's, that those are some of the things and where some of the wheels come off the bus, sometimes even at a higher level, that affect the impact that enablement can have.
So, what I heard you say was that sales leaders need to make sure the sales team and the sales team's goals are in alignment with the rest of the organization.
especially
And
the CEO and where the CEO wants to take things. You bet.
my immediate thought was, well, yeah, but the sales team's goal is to drive more revenue. So how could that not be in alignment? But as I heard you talk a little bit more, I heard you talking about things like pricing strategy and market position and so on. And that's exactly how it
Yep.
could be off. If you are not aligned with how marketing is positioning your solution to the marketplace, or the pricing strategies, it's the end of the quarter, discount everyone, get the sales in. Well, that's all well and good until you realize that doesn't align with how the company chooses to go to market. So there actually is more than just drive revenue there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. There is. That is a insightful dot connection, and I think of it. I talk in my book about sales comp, which is an area, by the way, I don't profess to be an expert. I've always found experts and brought them in to help. But I worked for a company at one point who was changing their comp plan year after year after year in frustration because it always turned out that the comp plan got the sales team to deliver exactly what it was designed to do, but that often wasn't exactly what the executive team initially hoped would happen. And so, if you're going to incent based on volume, you're going to get volume, but you may get unprofitable volume. And if you're going to incent just based on profitability, you might get margin, but you're going to lose a lot of business that you could have gotten at a slightly different margin. And so, there are all sorts of things like that. I mean, you and I were talking before we kicked off here about social selling strategy and how a content-led approach and a relationship-led approach actually leads to higher levels of conversion in business, right? And you and I have believed this for years and seen it to be true. But think about the impact on branding that what I see happening on LinkedIn has on a daily basis, right? I connect with somebody and I get an immediate pitch slap, right? I get the 10 paragraph pitch email with a Calendly link at the bottom, right? Or worse, I'm now getting a bunch of invites who have pitches in the invite. Hello,
All right.
right?
Well, yeah. Cut
This,
to the
this
chase,
Right. I've always used the phrase air, right? Pumping air into things. It is awareness, interest, and relationship. If you can establish an awareness, if you can share things that generate interest, and you do it in a way to build trust and relationships, your ability to set appointments or convert business or win opportunities changes dramatically. And now think about all of those organizations just blasting the market because they've got to get eyeballs or they've got to they've got to prove product market fit or revenue at any cost. Hey, if we get 1 or 2%, then, we've won, right? It's working. Man, that just makes me groan. But think of the impact that's having long term on the company branding. Do we
Right.
think that's in aligned with what the CEO really wants for the company or what the chief marketing officer is trying to accomplish with their PR approach or with even the way that they're approaching demand gen, which hopefully is built on buyer acumen and buyer personas and the way buyers want to buy. And, I mean, we think about all the research that's done in B2B buying now, we hear constantly that buyers are almost trying not to engage with sellers because they don't like this crazy behavior and the way that many behave. Not everybody. I don't want a broad brush here. There
No.
are a ton of really good, highly effective, relationship focused, buyer centric sellers out there, but it is the far right of the bell curve. And that big bulk in the middle, at least the ones I'm hearing from, are all just product pitching almost instantly as soon as someone connects with them on LinkedIn. And that really turns me off even as a sales professional, someone in the business for 39 years. And imagine what that does to your buyers. Oh, the other thing that's funny, Rob, 9 times out of 10, or maybe more, on these approaches that I get, I'm not even the ICP. I'm not
No.
their ideal customer profile. Why they're even pitching to me, right? It's rampant, poorly done automation or AI, right? That is being misused, and again, damaging reputation, damaging branding, damaging image of the company. All those things that I'm sure are making somebody cringe if they really knew what was going on.
So, not specific to the pitch slap approach, but just in general, building off of that, what consequences have you seen for organizations with poorly implemented sales enablement programs? Are they still better off than organizations with no sales enablement program at all?
In some cases, maybe, but in others, the research shows no, that that poorly done sales enablement can actually damage productivity. And think about the enablers whose goal is to just get stuff out there as opposed to uncovering a problem that they can help solve. They are constantly throwing more and more and more and more at the sales force, things that the sales force probably can't absorb and implement effectively, and things that maybe are disparate. There are these random acts of enablement that are happening as opposed to an aligned strategy where something, I think of it like instructional design, chunk, sequence, layer. You put like things together in chunks, you sequence them in an order that makes sense. When you've got one chunk in sequence, you can layer another one on top of that. Without some sort of an aligned strategy like that, you're just throwing stuff at the sales force, and you can actually slow them down and make them less effective or less efficient. The other thing I see happen a lot, Rob, is that we're stuck on tools, right? The latest, greatest tools and bright, shiny objects and tools at all cost. And you look at the number of tools that are being used today that, again, were sort of disparately placed without any type of an aligned or integrated strategy, and it's not helping. In fact, the whole concept of efficiency before effectiveness is crazy, right? Think about that. You're not operating at your highest level of efficiency, but you're going to put in more tools to make you more effective. As a friend of mine says, you're now just doing dumb stuff faster, right? And so if you can get focused on effectiveness first and get to that highest degree possible, then you can intelligently select tools that will help your team become more efficient at that level of effectiveness, right? But if you do it otherwise, your sales enablement efforts could actually be hurting the productivity of your sales force in your organization.
So, here's what sales leaders want to know. How can a well implemented sales enablement program drive results and make a tangible difference to my organization's bottom line? Help me make a business case for it.
Yeah, okay. So now we're talking, right? And this is what I've been trying to get across to enablers for a while. If you think in terms of, first of all, that whole strategy, tactics, and execution, and getting aligned with the organizational strategy and your sales leader strategy, who of course now is aligned organizationally. Step one. Step two, we use the term sales enablement charter. I don't think anybody in the sales world has ever used that before, right? I just always thought of it as my strategic plan. And so if you get the cross-functional leaders who you're either going to market or supporting those who are going to market, and you can get them aligned with this charter, this concept of who is going to do what to support customers in the sales force. How are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? Who's responsible for what and who supports what? How are we going to report on it? If you can get an aligned group of cross-functional leaders to create this charter together, now it can all be in support of strategy, tactics, and execution. Next thing, what I call a situation assessment. And this is also something I teach for discovery. It's so simple. It's an old consulting model that applies well for sales enablement or sales. What's the current state of the sales force? What are the challenges or opportunities in that current state? And when I say opportunities, I don't just mean the opposite of problems. I mean strategic opportunities, like with the SWOT analysis. What are the things that exist that, if they capitalize on them in whatever period of time that there's a window, right? Good things will result. So challenges, opportunities, and then what are the impacts of not resolving the challenges or not capitalizing on the opportunities? Future state. What are the outcomes that the executive team and senior sales leader want to get to, and what are the priority of those outcomes? Then you can do a gap analysis between the two and say, what would we need to bridge the gap between the current state and the desired future state? What capabilities, what things, what knowledge, what tools, whatever it might be. And then what would the impact be if we move from point A to point B? In that impact analysis, you are now creating that compelling business case. The reason for someone to give you budget to move from point A to point B, because you're looking at, where are we today? What are the risks? What are the challenges? What are the impacts? If we get over here, what are the outcomes and the priority of those? And what will that mean? If you dollarize that, you are now building an ROI case. If you've got that, if you've got your situation assessment, the next thing you can do, now this is selfishly to me, right? I've wrote a book called The Building Blocks of Sales Enablement, and it's really a framework of a dozen performance levers you can push and pull on, right? Tied together by communication and systems thinking, and then possibly some optional sales support services. What I do then is I say, well, let's look at each of the building blocks, right? Sales training, sales coaching, buyer acumen, whatever they are, right? The dozen core blocks and the systems execute them. And then do a gap analysis of those, but related back to your situation assessment. So this is what I mean. Look at sales training. Is the sales training in place today where it needs to be to get the objectives and outcomes of this situation assessment we've just done? How about coaching? How about sales management systems? How about content, like buyer engagement content? As we go through those performance levers, we're assessing them against this analysis that we did of the situation assessment in the sales force. That starts to tell you, what do I now need to do or build or problem solve with all of these things I can control in sales enablement to help the sales force get where they want to go based on this situation assessment. And this is what I mean when I say using a needle and a thread to connect these things: top level strategy, sales enablement charter, the situation assessment, the building blocks gap analysis, which leads to what I do then is I do a force field analysis from Kurt Lewin. What are the things that are in place today that are driving me forward in those building blocks analysis to get to that place that we want to get to? What are the restraining forces that are holding me back? And that's the force field today. You can weight those to help prioritize where to attack, but then you only have to ask two simple questions, Rob. What do I need to do to reduce or eliminate these restraining forces? And what do I need to do to add or strengthen these driving forces? And it's basically a change management thought process to help you figure out, how can I move forward? How do I break this force field, get rid of the things that are holding me back, move forward faster with the things that I know will get me there? And you have now strategically built a plan for sales enablement that ties needle and thread all the way up to the strategic objectives of the organization. Now, I have seen this work firsthand in companies where I've worked and in companies where I've consulted with or helped other enablers put into place. What worries me is, outside of that, how few times I see this kind of thing being done, or especially requested by senior sales leaders. And I have a theory as to why, but the fact that it still isn't happening as much as it should be, or something like it, it doesn't have to be my exact approach, right? But something like it. And I think it's because enablers, really good enablers, right? These are analytical data-driven people. These are problem solvers who want to take the toaster apart and put it back together to work better, right? And you think about that style, that personality, that human, and then you think about the average senior sales leader, driver, personable, right? Type A personality. You better communicate in 3 bullet points or less. And you think about all these things that are required to actually move the needle organizationally and do behavior change and change management. And it's not that. And so you've got a little bit of like oil and vinegar, oil and water here sometimes with sales and what really takes to drive change in a large scale organization. And that friction or that separation of oil and water, if you will, that's something that I think is on the senior sales leader or the CEO of the organization to help navigate. But certainly those in sales enablement have to at least be aware of it and have strategies to manage up effectively. Because again, if you can get alignment across all three of those, and no, you're not going to get the senior sales leader to sit down probably and have a detailed and go through all of this stuff that I just talked through at a detailed, 2,500 bullet point level. You're going to have to roll it up at some point, but it's not going to be 3 bullet points either. There has to be some meeting in the middle of the leadership and what it's going to take to really get where they want to go in an organization, which isn't just, harder, faster, longer, louder, which is still a very common sales management methodology.
Wow. In 30 minutes, you have given us a masterclass on building sales enablement. So thank you for that, Mike.
Well, thank you. It's kind of you to say. It's the stuff that I've seen work, Rob, over the years, and I just wish I saw more of it again. Whether it was exactly my methodology or whether it's something remotely close to it. I just think that in the sales profession and in organizations in general, it's a logical, thoughtful process that I wish I saw more of.
Agreed. Me too. So back to those 3 bullet points. You have given us the why, the how, and the what in building effective sales enablement programs, things that every sales leader should take into account, should act on. So thank you for that.
Very
Mike,
well.
how can people get in touch with you?
Well, if you type Mike Kunkle, Kunkle, in the word sales into Google, I have been around for so long and I've published so much stuff. I think I own the first 10 pages. But the easiest way really is probably on LinkedIn. It's, and you get the IN/Mike Kunkle, no dash, no underline, no, whatever, just MikeKunkle. I'm on X, which I still have a hard time saying, right? I missed the little bird on Twitter. So you can find me there as Mike_Kunkle. I have a link tree link, linktr.ee/Mike Kunkle. And that's cool because it's got a bunch of different places that I publish free content. I've got a newsletter on LinkedIn, which is all free. I try to publish something once a week. I do skip from time to time, but and we've got, I've got paid content, right? I've got a book. Anybody that purchased it, thank you for the $2 that I get. But I've got a course with Felix Kruger on the building blocks of sales enablement. People can check that out. But really, Rob, I'm trying to give back to the community for all the years and everything this work has done for me. So I really do publish as much free content as I possibly can, and that's out there. And you can find it, pretty easy with a search or just by following me on LinkedIn or using that Linktree link. So I hope that stuff might help people.
Awesome. Well, again, Mike, thank you very much. To our audience, thank you very much for your comments. And this has been another edition of Sales TV. Join us again next week. And until then, everyone, have a good week. Oh, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everybody. And thank you.